Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here. What the world needs now is love. More love.
Stars literally aligned.
He's always been the one.
There's someone out there for everyone.
I'm Nancy Regan, your host on the Canadian Love Map. We are on a journey to uncover and share love stories of all kinds.
He's never forgotten to bring me flowers.
We're hoping we're going to give a little good news to this world.
Even in these dark times, the life continues to go on.
It's all about compassion, devotion, adventure, and of course, love.
Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs love.
This is the Canadian Love Map.
Well, love is the most important thing.
The thing that I love and respect most is just this sense of strength. When you're down, getting back up. And through all of the challenges in life, she's still standing.
I can't say how proud I am of the work he does. I see him do a lot of volunteers in the community, and every year I know he tries to make sure that there's extra spot for First Nations people at the university. Like I said, family values are showing up there.
Today's love story belongs to Jocelyn and Randy. Some people go to university and have their family come to their graduation and sit on the sidelines. But this mother-son duo completed school at the University of BC together. Randy graduated in law and his mother Jocelyn with a PhD in education and sciences. They graduated one day apart 6 years ago. And while their accomplishments are a matter of pride individually and for their family, they are also both contributing to a profoundly larger mission for their community. This is the Canadian Love Map. Jocelyn and Randy, welcome to the Canadian Love Map podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's an interesting time for me to be talking to you because I'm actually, as we record this, the morning after my daughter's prom. So I'm in the midst of a graduation process in my family of my third and final graduate. And so I'm very tuned into your story today, and I can't wait to hear it from your perspective. So tell me how it is that your graduation was very different than my experience of watching my daughter go through the process.
Well, one of the interesting things about when we graduated in 2016 was I graduated from the Peter A. Allard Law School. My mother, Jocelyn, had graduated with her PhD from UBC as well. So it was very interesting. It was one day apart. We walked the stage one day apart, attended each other's graduation ceremonies. And it was just a really amazing experience. We're Algonquin. Our First Nation is Temiskaming. It's a Quebec First Nations. And in that respect, it was significant for us as well, being two members of that First Nation. My mom, I'm sure, has some things to say about that too.
Yes, it was a beautiful day. It complemented the ceremony graduation that we would have with the First Nations Longhouse. So it was another extra graduation that we shared with First Nations people at the Longhouse. So the two together were just filled our hearts with joy. And it so happened that I do have another son who is attending at the same time, although he was in the First Nations NITEP program. He's now doing his PhD in experimental medicine. And for him, he's doing a great job, and I'm proud of both of them for, really making a place for us and giving voice to First Nations people.
Wow. Please, I want to dive right into the Longhouse celebration because the moment you said it, I just kind of got chills. I can tell from the energy with which you even said the words how perhaps incredibly special it was.
Yes. Well, I can't speak for Randy, but for me, I know that I had all my colleagues there that were cheering me on with the drums and, that extra special, you knew who everyone was in the audience that was cheering you on. And like I said, it complemented the mainstream graduation that we had, where I had other colleagues who were there too. And although it was a bigger crowd there.
I would love for you, because your relationship is mother and son, I would love for you to take us back and tell us the story of you two from the beginning.
Yeah, Randy was the weighed the most in pounds. He was like 10 pounds, and so that was one of those pregnancies where you're going, oh, I can't wait, and he was very talkative and really smart. And I said, one day you argue so much, you're going to be a lawyer. And I only said it in passing, but never really, we never spoke of it ever again. It just because it came out one day in my little intuition. And and then from there, I guess, I had 7 children. We ended up moving to Vancouver. And so here I attended Emily Carr University after having worked a little bit in the school board here.
And Jocelyn, sorry, time out for 1 second there. You were a single mother of 7 children at that point?
Yeah, that was
wow. I'm just having to get over that hump. That's amazing.
That was a big jump. And, we do have our supporters. And I had started work very early in Surrey, which is just outside of Vancouver. And I was working at a high school there as a support worker. I don't even think I had a bank account when I moved here to Vancouver. And everything was new, like taking the bus, everything was so new. And one thing I knew is that my children had to get back into the hockey, get their sports going. And so it was quite an adventure. And so that working as support worker, I had some colleagues that were really, really, really good. But it was so far from home that I decided I better find a solution to that so I could be home with my children and not home at 5. So I ended up going to Emily Carr, where I could negotiate my hours better. And so from there, I really learned to express myself. During that time, I was in the field of sculpture, so I was creating. And so every time I had to create a sculpture, I always involved my children in the projects. And they will tell you on their own account just how much work it was, because it was always like putting together lots of little intricate pieces to make a big sculpture. So many of those projects, and even to this day, they've been helping me with those kind of things. So on from Emily Carr, though, I went to do a master's at Simon Fraser. And at Simon Fraser, another eye-opening thing happened for me. I was in a class it was a First Nations curriculum, a 2-year master's program. And in that program, the first day I walked into the room, I saw 30 other First Nations people in the room. And that absolutely blew me away. Having grown up in the early days in Quebec, where there's quite a bit of racism, I'm not exaggerating. The egregious waste the system was at that time for our ancestors as well was just that all came back to me right when I saw those 30 people, and it just got better from there. Every day that I was with my colleagues, I never felt I had to withhold any information of what I was thinking, because I was amongst the other First Nations people who were, it was just an amazing experience. That's when I got a clear vision that I have to go on again and do a little bit more and bring our Algonquin voice. I mean, it was Salish people making their voice. And I thought, well, what about our Algonquin voice? I have to do something too. And so I ended up going on to do the PhD at UBC. But to do that UBC, I said, I can't be wasting my sculpture degree, my visual arts degree. So I went into the Center for Cross-Faculty Inquiry in Education. So it's education, but art as well.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that you included the experience of walking into that classroom of 30 Indigenous classmates after having heard your mom's experience of that narrative from going from one circumstance to another in a very
Yes.
positive way. What has the arc been like for you in your life?
I think my mom would agree too that there are challenges when that sort of shift happens. It's a very difficult thing, I would imagine, for a family, any family, to move from a dual parent household to a single mother situation. But we really did cope with it well. I have a large family. I have seven siblings, and we just, as my mom said, we chipped in whenever we would have an art project. We'd be there tying together the coffee ties or the whatever it is we were working on. And really that sense of family really went a long way in making sure that curve or that transition didn't have any detrimental impact in the long term.
When did you know you were going to be a lawyer, Randy? I'm curious whether your mom planted a seed or if she, as she said, had an instinct and knew something in her inner wisdom.
Well, I think despite there being a transition from to when I was young, we always had very solid core values in our family, and that really, I think, instilled a sense of justice in me from the outset. And so I've always had a sense of justice in what's right and wrong. And I think moving to Vancouver in the inner city, I got a better picture of some of the challenges that First Nations people are facing, and that further instilled a sense of wanting to do something more about it. And it just happens that I went to law school, and it just happens that I ended up in the criminal justice system, and I'm now a Crown prosecutor. So I deal with these very core issues that Indigenous people are facing every day. So.
Oh my God. I can't say how proud I am of the work he does. I see him do a lot of volunteers in the community, and he's just works so hard, and I'm so proud of the kind of work he's doing for underprivileged youth. Every year, I know he tries to make sure that there's extra spot for First Nations people at the university. So those are really, really things that, like I said, family values that are showing up there.
An interesting thing too, Nancy, is the art projects haven't stopped. So I frequently commissioned my mom to do these really beautiful dress sculptures.
Yeah.
And they've been auctioned off to help Artican students funds, so scholarships. Mm-hmm. And it's the same sort of idea. The whole family's chipping in, even at this sort of stage in our life.
Oh my gosh.
We're enlisted to do this work, and it continues to be a sense of connection for us. So.
Well, I can explain a little bit about that project. So for this project, the dresses that I create are sculpture dresses, but they are under the theme of address, but to address something. So their theme was to address reconciliation. So for the lawyers, I thought, well, they're going to be gathering together at several tables, having coffee, and trying to dialogue about reconciliation amongst themselves. So I said, well, I have to create something that brings that feeling together. So I had saved up coffee pods, which are like little, the little round pods.
Yes, like the Keurig ones.
Yes, the Keurig, but not the ones that are
Nespresso. Right.
The organic ones that have like a little filter in the bottom.
Yes.
So I had collected a whole bunch of those, and so I thought, well, those would be perfect little booklets. So I thought, well, if the lawyers could write their thoughts to these questions about reconciliation, if they could write their answers on a big filtered paper, and then crush that up like a leaf for the as a page in a book. So we put those filtered dialogues and put them into the coffee pods and close them up, attach them, and they'd be like a little book. So each table would have these little booklets, and then eventually they would get tied onto a dress. So the dress was I think about 8 feet high, and it was made of rope, woven rope. Yeah. And so the bottom of the dress was filled with all these coffee pod dialogues anyway. And so the idea there is that, instead of presenting at the end a report, a 5-page report, we have a living dialogue art report, but in the form of a sculpture. And so it's a permanent sculpture that's downtown here in Vancouver in one of the
Canadian Bar
I never get those. Any acronym I will never get in my life.
That's genius creativity. That is. Even when you said filtered conversations.
Yeah. So they're on those coffee pods. So there were these pointy, I used toothpicks that were painted with black ends. It's meant to look like porcupine quills that we would use, for sewing, whatever. And so these porcupine quills were meant to, to make you think of the, that punctum area, that area where you have to, it's hard to discuss something, but, it's prickly. But if you open the book, you get there, get into the heart of it.
That's amazing. We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. Jocelyn, I'm curious to know, you describe having had an instinct that Randy might be a lawyer someday in the future when he was a child. Tell me about what you were like as a child, if you don't mind. I would love to hear about the birthplace of this incredible creativity you possess or you connect to.
Well, I grew up in a small little mining town. It's not mining town, a logging town, and my father was a foreman on the water there, going up and down the river. So I grew up right beside the river, the first house on the river. And so he was a hunter, so he was a well-known hunter there, but also he worked in the logging industry. So I grew up in a very French community where there were no English-speaking community for about 10 miles. But there was quite a bit of racism that we really underwent, and the schooling system was a Catholic school system, which was it had its benefits, but it also had the racism that every school had, whether it was Catholic or not Catholic. So that was a great thing to endure, especially name calling and just the idea of not speaking your language was quite big. I know I heard my parents speak the language when we were out in the bush one time. We were out blueberry picking, and I heard them speaking the language, but I had never heard them speaking it any other time. It was such a, something hidden away and not can't speak for their reasons, but I'm sure they share the same reasons as many Canadian First Nations people.
Well, and hearing you tell that story, reminds me of how complicated Canada Day has become for me and so many Canadians in the past decade, as we've learned more about horrific chapters. And I want to say, I want to celebrate all the good things Canada is, but also recognize stories like yours that you've just uttered that just, go straight to your core and your heart. Is it fair to ask the question, because of the subjects we've covered, how you feel both of you, given your experiences in your life, about where we are now in our country with truth and reconciliation. You both have such powerful voices. I can't not ask this. And I'm reminded of hearing someone say, it's not a destination, it's a journey, and it's a long journey.
One of the things that I really love about my work is that I do get to see the experiences of Indigenous people every day. Perhaps not always in the best sort of circumstance, but it's a frontline view of some of the challenges that we're facing as First Nations people. What I've really realized is that there is a significant shift in the last few years where people are really open-minded to reconciliation, listening, finding truth first, and then reconciliation. Part of that is keeping the conversations going. And this is in itself a very reconciliatory process today. But I think with the view of bringing reconciliation to the forefront, it's important to keep those questions in mind. In the work that we're doing, my sister, Jennifer Robinson, she's a medical doctor, just in the last couple of years, I believe. And she does a lot of the same work in her work. So I think as a family, we're very committed to reconciliation and advancing these reconciliatory initiatives in our fields. But it really comes down to having that openness in the public sphere, having that openness in our work environments to the conversations. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to pursue reconciliation where we're keeping an open mind and asking the hard questions.
Yeah, I think you well said, Randy. About Jennifer, I remember when she was graduating just a couple of years now, and she at her school at McGill University that they hadn't had the acknowledgements yet, which is the First Nations knowledge of the land during introductions, and so she had introduced that to them, and they accepted it and did it. And so I was quite glad when I went to her graduation to see that they had done the Anishinaabe, and then while there is a Mohawk Montreal, so it's. They did the acknowledgement there, so it was wonderful. And
I think one thing I'd add to that, Nancy, would be I think it's important for institutions and organizations to really commit to that openness. I've worked with the Law Society on things that involve First Nations people, and particularly as it relates to complaints and that sort of thing, where typically in the past, Indigenous people haven't had a good experience. The same with the justice work that I do. I'm always keeping my mind to Ladue principles, which are basically factors that relate to systemic and historic racism. So, but none of that matters if the institutions or the organizations aren't taking it up and implementing it.
I'm curious as to whether you were a defense lawyer before you became a prosecutor.
I was. For about. I started out articling in 2016 with a criminal defense firm, Johnson, Doyle, Sugarman, and Ferguson, and then I went in to do about 9 months of defense work before moving to the Crown and taking a Crown role. The defense work was so rewarding. I got to. I primarily did that work at a court location called 222 Main Street, which is the downtown east side of Vancouver. And so I got a frontline view of some of the worst circumstances that Indigenous people are in. And I got to help. And I wouldn't say that ended when I shifted to the Crown work. I think it just enhanced my ability to incorporate that into the work. And it's been such a great journey in the last 6.5 years. So.
Well, that's exactly why I was asking, because it strikes me that that's kind of a profound shift, that you were able to go from defense work into the other side, if you will.
Yes.
and I can only imagine the impact you're having.
Well, an important sort of part of my work as Crown Counsel is it's not to win or lose. It's to make sure that justice is done, and the way we do that is really keeping in mind the circumstances of people's lives, and for First Nations people, that includes a history of colonialism. I learn a lot from my mom in terms of she was describing her history in Quebec. We've had a lot of conversations. We go on a lot of walks, and that's really been a sense of support for me and stability, and reinforcing uh, my I guess you would say hope and reconciliation.
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect word. And I've heard you say it before in some of your talks, and I think you're right. That is the bottom line. You need to have hope.
Do me a favor and just give me an example of what's happening on those walks between the two of you.
Well, Randy, if he says there's a coffee waiting, yeah, I think I'll be on that walk. So we've gone everywhere. I mean, in your early days, when you're in law school, we'd walk like 20 days.
Yes.
Wherever there was a TVs or
we've walked in the rain and the sun and the snow. And
yeah, it's just he just kind of like I just listened to what he had to say, what he's working on, and if there was something I thought, well, it could be good or not good, but he'd incorporate it sometimes.
Yes.
And the vice versa. If I was doing something in education, I like especially concerned law, because for my education at the PhD level, I was working on sort of a reconciliation, but it wasn't termed that. It was more about Western knowledge and traditional knowledge. And so for my part, I interviewed 3 elders and 6 scientists, so Indigenous and non-Indigenous scientists. And so I got their perspective on the ways that we could complement Western knowledge and Indigenous knowledge. And, so it's a form of reconciliation. But Randy gave me a lot of pointers that I needed for, with his law background.
Well, a good example, Nancy, is I distinctly remember, I believe it was 2012. I had just finished my undergrad work, and we were on a walk kind of by the UBC Kitsilano area. And I remember I told my mom I've been accepted into law school, and I was talking to her about that. And one of the things I distinctly remember her saying was, this will change everything. And it's a responsibility, but it's something for you, but it's also for your community and your family. I don't see it as just a accomplishment for me. I bring my family with me and my ancestors into the work that I do, into the courtroom. So that's a very important lesson I learned from my mother.
And I'm curious as you walk as to whether nature is a lubricant for those important conversations.
I think so. I think I still do follow some of their ways, which is, to put out water or tobacco when you really want to connect with the ancestors. I mean, I think that's still part of my life. But your question was also, how's everything now, right, in schools? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think the project I'm involved with, my son Dave, who's like I said, in experimental medicine, for his research, he's doing an interesting project in a high school here, a local high school, where he attended actually. So he is working with youth and in a carving project, and so connecting that with mental health. And so I thought, wow. So he invited me to participate in that, and so I get to watch these beautiful First Nations youth inquiring and inspiring others through their participation in this project. So so things are changing. I mean, the curriculum in BC and for First Nations people is pretty amazing. But this project here is bringing a whole new aspect to the curriculum. So it may advance curriculum in a very meaningful way, aside from just text. It's an active participation in.
Jocelyn, as I listen to you mention your children individually, it occurs to me that I should nominate you for an honorary doctorate in motherhood. Sounds like you deserve it.
No,
Oh my goodness.
I'm fully aware that there are many women out there who are making their way in all sorts of circumstances. And yes, I'm just one more.
Well, you're amazing. Randy, what do you love most about your mom?
The thing that I guess I would say I love and respect most is just this sense of strength and the sense of when you're down, getting back up and doing it in a way with full force and just being present. So there's so much, but that was one of the things that I really respect is through all of the challenges in life, she's still standing and still supporting her kids and doing an amazing job. So that's what I would say I love about that.
Well, he's active in that way. He actually signed me up for a race recently this weekend, right?
Yes.
Last weekend that just passed.
And she won.
And I got second place in it. Well, it was just a 5K though, but I was too early in the morning, way early.
You would have done better if it was at noon.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Jocelyn, what do you love most about your beautiful son, Randy?
What I like about Randy is very thoughtful about his siblings. He's always making sure that they're okay if they need anything. But he's remained himself. He's very Randy. but he's
very Randy.
Yeah.
He's very much himself. I love that.
Yeah, he's himself. But, if ever you have a problem, he is going to do everything he can to fix it. That's the way he is.
Beautiful. Randy, I have the instinct that I would like to end by having you give a message of love to your mom in your first language.
One of the things that we say in our language is thank you. It's an important way of acknowledging what we've done in our lives. And the way we say that is miigwech.
And I'll say Zagian. I love you.
Well, that's a mic drop moment. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. I'm just honored and delighted that we got to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much
for
listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.